In your local community garden, your sister shows you her favorite plant. It's the pea plant. You immediately ask her which kind of pea plant, since some of the plants have purple flowers and others have white ones. She looks confused, but then understands. She says they're all the same species. That's when your sister pulls out her weird portable microscope. Putting a purple flower under the microscope, she begins to zoom in. Soon you can see 7 pairs of squiggly lines. This is a karyotype, she says. A karyotype shows you all the genetic material, or chromosomes, in an organism. As she zooms in more, she gives you a closer look at a pair of chromosomes. That's a homologous pair. They're homologous because they have the same type of genes, also known as alleles, in the same location. See the purple stripes? Those represent the allele for petal color. Since both chromosomes in the pair have the same allele, we call the pair homozygous for the petal color. The thing is, that isn't always the case. She quickly switches the purple flower out for a different purple flower. When you look at the allele of that flower, you're shocked. One is white and the other is purple. Your sister tells you that this flower is heterozygous for petal color because it has different alleles in its 2 chromosomes. When you look up at her, you expect an explanation for the white allele in the purple flower, but your sister is on her phone looking something up. She shows you a low-quality picture of a man. This is Gregory Mendel. He was a monk in the 1800s and wanted to know how and why organisms of the same species could have different traits. She gets another flower and shows it to you. Remember how I told you that chromosomes come in homologous pairs? Well, that's because one chromosome comes from the female part of the plant, the carpel, and the other comes from the male part, the stamen. For Mendel's experiment, he wanted to make sure that the flowers did not fertilize themselves or self-fertilize. Instead, he wanted the flowers to fertilize each other, which he called cross-fertilization. In order to control what flowers fertilize what plants, he cut off the stamen and painted the pollen of a flower homozygous for purple petals on a flower homozygous for white petals. These original flowers would be called the parental generation. What Mendel found was incredible. Every single one of the parental generation's offspring, or the F1 hybrid generation, was purple. Puzzled by this, Mendel continued his experiment, but this time he let the hybrid generation self-fertilize. Despite the fact that all of the F1 hybrid generation were purple, their offspring, called the F2 generation, were not. In fact, a quarter of their offspring had white petals. Mendel was able to conclude from his experiment that pea plants follow a dominant recessive inheritance pattern, where the dominant trait, like the purple petals, always matched that of the recessive trait, like the white petals. However, just because the allele wasn't expressed, it didn't mean that it disappeared. It could still show up in future generations. Your sister says that inheritance patterns like this one are applicable to people too. You think for a moment about the differences between you and your sister. Both had the same parents, and wonder what more you could learn about genetics.